Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz artist, composer, educator, and cultural seeder, Jonathan Suazo. We caught up with this rising jazz star about his new 2024 CD, Ricano Live, done in 2023, surviving COVID, growing up in Puerto Rico, and beyond. This award-winning artist opened up about this album that is a unique Afro Caribbean jazz concept that blends the sounds of Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. Jonathan was named one of the top 10 emerging jazz artists of 2023 by the Grammys and has gone on to receive many honors. The star is on the rise, and we get into all of it from his base in Boston. Dig it.
It's great to meet you, man. Thanks for taking a minute out.
Oh, man, you too. I'm sorry for the mishap the other day.
Oh, no worries, man. Yeah, no, those are first world problems. That's no big deal at all, for sure.
You're right about that.
So, before we get into your live album, I want to know first and foremost, the pandemic 4 years ago, we were trying to figure out how long it was going to last and just kind of navigating our way through. How did you ultimately make it through that pandemic period as an artist? And how did it how did it change the way you do things now?
That's a great question, man. To be frank, it actually, I'm assuming like for everybody else or a lot of people, we may have this in common. It's a pretty dark time in the sense of, not really understanding what the certainty in this field was, just thinking about what essential jobs and essential workers are. So it's definitely a slump, but the way that I had managed to get through it was to find new things to learn, completely removed from music. Because I think as an artist, I get really attached to my work. I express myself through it. I channel emotions through my work, through my compositions. And when that was completely removed, I realized, like, hey, man, we're going to be locked in for an indefinite amount of time. So I picked up a few hobbies. I picked up, like, kettlebell swinging. I picked up, like, calisthenics exercise and stuff that I really didn't know how to do too well, and just focused on just like the instrument, hitting it every single day. And that allowed me to have time to not worry about what was going to happen in the future and still be excited to be learning new things. And that kind of set me up to be in a positive, receptive state to be able to keep pursuing music during the pandemic, So I was still coming to the horn. I was still writing music, and I think that was it. Just having the support from my musical community, my family, and definitely picking up new things to learn and focus my emotions in, so that the music would not ultimately suffer the consequences of whatever was happening on the outside world.
And I think the one thing that's triumphant about artists today that are releasing albums is that there's something special about a live album, for the amount of time that we didn't have live music. So my question is, what does this new album mean for you?
It means the world. This is usually when you have specific situations, like you have a specific type of band, a specific type of concert. I think it's always best following the example of amazing performers, our heroes in the performance environment, especially in the jazz environment, to record it. Just press record whenever you do have an opportunity and you do have a really good setup. So for me, in a time, going back to the pandemic time, we were definitely, like you said, we were closed off from performing live. So I think coming back to the working world where things are somewhat back to normal, even though things are pretty chaotic, we're able to perform in person again. And I think, everybody's approaching it with a new type of energy. It feels like there's a lot more intention in keeping that a thing. Some people may not buy albums anymore or anything like that, but there is something to be said about the magic that takes place when you perform live, and mistakes and all. that experience of performing live brings a very unique type of magic. And if I can remember to all of the takes that I've done from other things that I've recorded in the past, usually the ones that are like everybody's in the same room, everybody's like focused on hitting their parts, no overdubs. Those are usually the ones that come out the best because there's genuine human connection, the type of connection that you can't really see or taste, but you can definitely feel it, where there's an audience there. And with this particular album, it was so special because it was an album release concert for the Ricano album that we recorded in Puerto Rico. So some of the tunes were recorded in Puerto Rico during that album release concert, and that's my hometown. Everybody came out. The place was completely packed, so the energy was so beautiful. You could just feel the love in the room, and I'm so grateful that I was able to have the huge band that I was able to take. At some point, we were like 13 people on stage. So that type of setup is not necessarily the type of setup you're always going to be able to have for budgeting reasons. So I knew that it was going to be a special concert. It meant even more that I was recording it in Puerto Rico, and some of the other tunes were recorded in Chicago in another special place for me, the Segundo Ruiz Belvis Cultural Center. The one in Puerto Rico was recorded in Santurce, Puerto Rico, at the Escuela Comunitaria La Goico. And man, it was something really, really special. To me, it just means never let go of that feeling, No matter how well you can use the studio as an instrument, there is always going to be that it factor that performing live is going to bring to the audience and to the band,
So let me ask you this. What are you ultimately hoping the listener gets from this recording?
As close to as possible to a live performance, that they get a taste and maybe it sparks an interest for them to come see us wherever we're performing, In any case, it's definitely an attempt for me to document things that are taking place in specific moments in our lives. And coming out of the pandemic and being able to perform these years later was, I'm definitely on the lookout for things that are worth documenting. And this was definitely one that was worth documenting for that specific reason that I described. Like, there were so many people there. The love was just amazing. So what I'm really hoping that people will take from it is a little bit of that energy that you feel when you hear this project live. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of intention. So I'm hoping that they'll feel a little bit of that love and take it home, either through streaming platforms or buying an album. I'm hoping that that'll spark even more interest for people to come closer to these sounds from Puerto Rico and from the Dominican Republic. And also the fact that this is a pretty unique project in the jazz world, considering the particular combination of sounds. So definitely having people take that as, hey, this is also a sound that I could get into, just getting those things out there, celebrating, exporting, and sharing my cultural roots through music.
Beautiful. So let's go to the beginnings of everything. Tell me kind of what your childhood was like and how you got into music and how more specifically jazz became your destiny.
Well, I got into music when I was in 7th grade. My father was a saxophonist as well. May he rest in peace. He passed away in 2011, and he was also a saxophonist. He really enjoyed jazz music. He wasn't a jazz player per se, but he played, little corporate things, and he was always into supporting whatever it is that I was into. My mom as well, huge amounts of support. But having my dad be a musician, he always dug people like, Stan Getz, like David Sanborn, like Sonny Rollins. So you'd see a couple of those records laying around, Stanley Turnpeen, all that cool stuff. And then whatever I was into growing up, my dad would kind of like pick up on it, and he'd start buying me magazines related to it or things of that nature. And when it came to music, I graduated from 6th grade and went into this specialized school in 7th grade that was both a music school and an academic school. Now, I had no prior classes or inclination towards music, but it was the place where some of my good friends were going. So we did a little prep camp for the audition for this school, somewhat affordable. We, definitely couldn't afford private schooling or anything like that. So this is pretty much a public school, which is, great because it's a great program, academic and musical. We did that short prep work. I auditioned. I got in. I wanted to be a drummer. There was no space left for drumming, but, I had a space to put in a second instrument. So I was like, I'm seeing a saxophone at home, so maybe I'll just put that. So I put the saxophone. I got in through saxophone, and just starting out, coming in from being a Montessori kid, not necessarily too acquainted with the concept of discipline and specific hours and what this new world brought. We would get into school at 7:30 a.m. and we would leave at 5:30 p.m. with a short hour and a half break in between to go from musical lessons and then in the afternoon the academic lessons. So it was pretty intense. So coming into that, 7th, 8th grade, wasn't really into the whole practicing situation. My band teacher would tell my mom, he needs to practice a lot more. He needs to get these scales together. And eventually I started kind of getting into it. And, as teenagers do, they grow up and things start happening in your life, hormonal changes all over the place. Falling for girls and having all those up and downs of those new feelings. So I ended up going through this heartbreak kind of situation, and that kind of made me understand oh wait, I can channel some emotion through this piece of metal. And I remember that was kind of like a moment where I realized oh wait, there's a particular connection here. As a lot of this music in jazz does, it kind of comes from chaotic situations. So usually, isn't that the case for so many artists? Pain and suffering results in cool works. So that was a starting point. Then towards 10th grade, my very first jam session that I ever attended was a jam session led by Mr. Miguel Senon. So super well-known, Grammy Award-winning saxophonist from Puerto Rico as well. My harmony teacher took me to this jam session, and that was the first time that I ever encountered that electricity of what happens live, in a room with just three cats dictating the energy of the room. So it was Miguel Zenon on sax, Ricky Rodriguez on bass, and Henry Cole on drums. And they did this every end of the year, Christmas time, play the music from somebody's album, and then they would open up a jam session. So these jam sessions were super well known in the Rio Piedras area in Puerto Rico. It was my very first jam session. I didn't know much tunes, but I was introduced to Miguel by my harmony teacher, and he let me come up, play one of the tunes that I barely knew, and at the end, he was like, you should probably start getting into some repertoire, get yourself like a couple of records, get yourself like a book or something that you can start reading some of these tunes and expanding your vocabulary, and that really set the spark for me. From then on, I actually was really interested in getting into the jazz language and trying to find out how I can do what he was doing on stage, just electrifying the room with the horn and everything that was happening and the interaction that was happening with the trio on stage. So I graduated from that specialized school. It's called the Escuela Libre de Música. I got into the Conservatory of Music in Puerto Rico, the jazz department, Jazz and Caribbean Music Department. Back then it was led by Marco Piñataro, who designed the curriculum for it. And I was blessed throughout my entire undergrad, I had the blessing of having Mr. David Sanchez be a resident faculty. So he would come in every couple of months. He would come in and we would be able to have lessons with him. And just like Miguel, these are two of the most iconic musicians in the saxophone instrument from Puerto Rico. So having that blessing really started opening up my development, and the conservatory, I would say that it was where I had that ultimatum that I set out for myself. Like, you get better, you decide to get better, and you can actually see some things happening and you can go forward, or you can try your best, and if it doesn't work out, then maybe you can start looking at other things. Because when I went into the conservatory, I was a little bit behind on a couple of things, so I entered in a preparatory year. So that entire first semester was kind of disastrous. The second semester was the semester where I really dug deep and started seeing some improvement. And from then on, things really started to pick up. I got my very first heavy jazz gig with well-known percussionist and songwriter Mr. Paoli Mejias, who now tours with Carlos Santana. And he has a quintet that used to tour a lot and play a lot in Puerto Rico and in the States. He recorded a bunch of albums with this quintet, and the people that would write the music and the arrangements for him were people like Jaleel Shaw, like Miguel Sinhan, so I was playing that type of music when I was in my undergrad, and kind of like learning from them without taking lessons from them, in a sense, and that was amazing. A great experience. Just really got me into the concept of you got to memorize the music. You always got to be counting. It's about everybody keeping the time. And then right towards the end of my undergrad, my dad passes away. He passed away from lung cancer, and that was right before my last semester at the conservatory. So I did my last semester, which was a heavy one, but I was heavily motivated after his passing to really pursue this craft that I feel like was somehow really connected with him. So I graduated in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. Then 2013, I recorded my first kind of indie album called Extracts of a Desire. And then from then on, I started, performing a lot more in Puerto Rico. Recorded another thing in 2014 called Vital. All indie albums, sort of from the ground up type of things, self-funded and stuff like that. And then in 2016, I auditioned for the Berklee Global Jazz Institute and made my move to Boston, where I'm at now. And from then on, things really started to pick up. That's where the Ricano project was born. I was able to study with Mr. Joe Lovano, John Patitucci, Danilo Perez, Tara Lynn Carrington, Cruz, all these amazing George Garzone, like amazing musicians that really sort of gave me an example of like, whatever it is that you do, and if you look back, all the most iconic people were always like looking to be as honest with themselves as possible, and really go for new things, try to be your genuine self. So in the pursuit of that, I really started thinking, what is the project that I can do, that I can start putting all these tools that I've gathered throughout the years into. And I decided to go the route of celebrating my cultural roots, Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. My dad was actually from the Dominican Republic, and my mom from Puerto Rico. And that's where the Ricano is actually a play on words that I created, Puerto Riqueño Dominicano, Ricano. That's where it was born. So throughout my entire undergrad, influences like Charlie Parker, like Hannibal Adderley, Miguel. I was at one point I literally sounded exactly like Miguel. I had to be told by people, actually, even when I came here to Boston, like, you got to stop. You got to stop sounding exactly like Miguel. Like, look for intentionally look for other things, because it's so ingrained in you. So people like that, like, later on train. And right now, my favorite saxophonist is Mr. Kenny Garrett, and you can definitely hear a little bit of that influence in my playing. And yeah, that's basically everything up to now. And then 2023, we released the Ricano studio album. Many blessings came from that. Thankfully, we were able to get funded by a couple of grants, and things have been amazing through the materialization of this project. We've impacted more than 600 students now with different outreach efforts that we do, and cultural centers or schools that we tie into the project. And we've also been able to perform in several festivals in the Midwest and the East Coast, and definitely the Caribbean and Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. And yeah, it's
right on.
It's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I caught Miguel in Kansas City a couple times. He was with the SF Collective, but that exact trio you referenced, I saw it, and it was crazy. Like, I've heard him on recordings. I saw him with the group, but when he was with that incarnation, he blew the top off of that place.
It's crazy. It's like whenever he's in that, and whenever they are in that configuration, it's like everybody's back home. It's just like this level of comfort that you can feel between them, and it's magic. So imagine, that was literally my first ever jazz performance concert. Just straight up, just that. So it was mind blowing. And Miguel is such an amazing cat. He's always, in some way, shape, or form, been keeping an eye on me and sort of like helping me in different ways. By either recommending me or giving me opportunities. And I've had the blessing of having him and David and Ricky Rodriguez on the Ricano album. So things that have developed through time, and I'm extremely blessed to call these people my friends.
So, what do you like the best about being a professional musician? What do you look forward to the most?
I look forward to just interacting with my fellow bandmates beyond the stage. On the stage, I look forward to challenging ourselves and reaching for something that we don't necessarily see, because this is very much a new concept and we're still developing it, and I'm always coming up with new things in which we can, refresh it and be intentional about what the sound is that I want to get out. So I look forward to challenging myself and the band so that we can all grow together and create new opportunities for ourselves and for future generations. And then getting to know everybody on a personal level. You know, when you tackle things like music and challenging music at that, it really says things about everybody's character and how everybody deals with things, and you really start getting a sense of everybody's personal situation and how they approach things. So as a band leader, you start understanding like how to approach different situations. So I look forward to getting to know the people that I'm working with a lot more through the lens of music. Usually the hangs are memorable because it's kind of what it's all about in that sense. I look forward to traveling. The act of traveling is horrendous. Most of the time, it's very tiring. But being in new places, you know, once the traveling, the act of traveling, getting from one place to another, airports, luggage, all that, or driving and or trains and all that stuff gets done. Once you're in a new place, it's amazing because it's new people that get to listen to the project, meeting new people. My band is somewhat of a movable thing. I'm a band leader, so like I described in this live album, it's at one point it's like 13 people on stage. So that's completely impractical for somebody who's just released this album last year. But what I do is that I travel to places and I may take like a couple of people from Boston or a couple of people from Puerto Rico, and then I complete the band in new places. So expanding my network, creating new friends in other places that actually get to be part of the band and play this music is something that has been amazing. I definitely look forward to it. You know, we did something in April for the spring run of concerts with a friend from Chicago. His name is Julian Pujols Qual, and he has a Haitian Caribbean project. And we did like a collaboration, and we formed a band with musicians from Chicago, and we played half of his music and half of my music. And thanks to that, I was able to tap into the community in the Chicago area. They completely loved the project, and now I can call a good amount of people over there my friends, and I know that they're like super pumped to play this music. So that's something definitely to look forward to know that you can go places and share your music with other people. People can share their music with you, and yeah, and definitely the attempt of trying to make a sustainable career out of this is a challenge that I look forward to. It's somewhat heavy at times, as freelance musicians will tell you, but it is a blessing to be able to play music for a living. So looking at the glass half full instead of half empty is usually a mind state that helps me get through things. So I look forward to that. I look forward to continuing my professional growth as a musician, getting better at my craft, getting better at what I do, and I look forward to keep expanding this project and getting it to as many audiences in different parts of the world as possible. Hopefully before I'm 80 years old, I can still make this happen.
So at the end of the day, everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
And I think I'm just a student, man. I think I'm just a student of this music, and I will forever be a student of this music. But as time dictates, you will ultimately have to carry responsibility, and that's just how life goes. So I'm happy to see myself coming into my own as a professional, as a leader, as an example for future generations. So I guess I see myself as both of those things. As a student, that I will definitely be a student for life, understanding very well how high the bar is set in this music and all across the entertainment industry. Understanding with humility, like, oh my God, there's like so much to do, and not letting that overwhelm me, and always understanding, like, it is always about doing whatever it is that you can to progress. And then also seeing myself as a leader of a sound, an architect of this particular sound that's combining two styles of music in a way that hasn't been done before. So I see myself as a pioneer in that sense, but always remembering where my influences come from and how other people have influenced my work with their work. So yeah, student / leader, I guess, would be the description.
Yeah. So the new album, if anyone wants to pick it up in earnest, or if they want to, pick up any previous material, find out about live shows, where's the best place to go?
JonathanSuazo.net. Just be sure to find my website, www.jonathansuazo.net. I'm always trying to update all the dates up there, all the upcoming things, all the news from articles that come out, book shows for festivals and for concerts. You can find everything there. You can pre-save all the releases and all that good stuff. You can buy the merch off of that website. So that's the best way. And if that's not your shtick and you prefer social media, definitely follow me on Instagram, Jonathan Suazo C. That's what I got.
Perfect, man. This has been wonderful, Jonathan. Thank you for taking a minute out. Best of luck. I love this story.
Oh man, thank you so much for taking the time out today, and yeah, hopefully I get to meet you in person. You get to see the band live one day.
Thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in Puerto Rico, Boston, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Jonathan for his time, energy, and cool. If you want to hear more Neon Jazz interviews, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to theneonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.